our great pleasure to once again welcome Dr. David Bush. Dr. Bush.
Thank you. I want to ask how many have been here for all four of these now? Okay, very nice. Excellent. How many have been here for at least some of them? All right, and new people? Wonderful.
Back from Florida.
I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, I know.
All right, so we typically have, we take a few minutes to introduce ourselves. So we'll start over here again. When you introduce yourself, then I want you either to define what you consider to be natural or tell us about what you would a place that you would consider to be natural, all right? Some place that you can identify as being natural or define what you mean by natural. Okay?
Sure.
Can you handle that?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm Lauren Lemon. If I'm gonna, natural, well, I would say it's what exists in an area without any assistance from others to live in that ecosystem.
Okay, well,
Is that?
What a question.
I know, I'm like perplexed.
Wow. And
we
you
gotta
didn't
get
to
these
number
things
one.
thinking early, you gotta be moving here.
All right, I'm Alice Holly. I would say I agree with Lauren, it's something that's not been touched by man, but I'm trying to figure a place where it's not. You'd say Grand Canyon, but man's been here. Something where, I always think in terms of animal and plant life, where they can progress, whatever you call it, evolve under their natural circumstances without influence from man's pollution.
All right.
That would be a good trip.
Or a woman, right?
Well, human,
Okay.
Only men, only men.
Oh,
Human.
Only men.
without human intervention.
Right, okay.
I'm Ellen Savron, but but nothing is truly, nothing's truly natural. I mean, because we are part of the ecosystem, so maybe then it is, everything is truly natural, right?
We're natural, kind of.
Well, everything, I mean, it's made from something on Earth, so everything is natural then. I don't know. You just like totally just threw
We're
it
just
here.
finishing
I don't
with
know.
that one, yeah.
I know, right? I don't know.
Okay, next.
I'm Mary Ellen Volksberger, and I don't know, I think when we lived out west, I really felt that the Rocky Mountains, we went up to the Rocky Mountains and the water was clear and we saw elk, and that's my picture of nature.
Okay, I can hear John Denver in the background.
Still.
Barb Banchuk, and to be honest, I'm not really sure what's natural anymore. Maybe at one time we had natural, but things have changed over the eons, and I'm not really sure what is natural anymore.
Okay,
I'm Connie Cito. It's a wonderful question, but I don't know why you couldn't add humans to it. At first I thought, oh, we're taking the humans away. I thought, no, we're part of nature, a big part of nature. And I thought of the deepest recesses of the ocean, when they mentioned unchanged, that maybe that would be one place where species that we may have thought have perished are truly still there. And then I think space would have to count. There's parts of it that we can't touch, but we know it's there. We know it's natural. But I'm just totally perplexed now, lost.
It is a perplexing question, and I'm not sure that we can discount humans and human intervention in nature, because animals change their environment all the time. Nothing changes the geography of a place more than beavers do in the water system, so human beings changing their environment is just another animal changing it at a higher order. So so
And
maybe
you are?
everything is natural. I don't know.
And you are?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Mary Bramer.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
I'm Bev Kendall, and I lived for a long time in the state of Oregon. And so I know all about the beautiful mountains there, and the state of Washington, which has natural rainforest, northern rainforest, which is very unusual, and it's pretty pristine, I think. So when I say think natural, that's the area I think of.
Okay.
I'm Mike Coutura, and I'm not thinking very philosophical. I used to live in a woodlot, and this time of year, of course, the flowers, spring flowers are coming up and everything else. And if you say nature, that's about the only thing I think of.
All right.
And I'm Bill Smith, and everything's natural and nothing's natural, because everything's always changing. So it's not what it was yesterday, and it's not yet what it will be tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm Joan Gerber. Well, I think what's natural to me is what just it has existed, and it continues to exist, and it seems that the more humans get involved with nature, the less natural everything's becoming. But I've always enjoyed I love to drive around the country. I just love to look at things and see the beautiful homes and the mountains and the little towns. That's what I would like to do. Like Neil Zucker,
All right. Do the one-tank trips all around.
you know?
Cool. I'm gonna read what they put at the beginning of this book, because I think it's really important to our discussion. It said, "And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, over every living thing that moveth upon the earth." So, what do you think about that?
The and subdue it part.
What about the and subdue it part?
Subdue it, humankind seems to try to subdue or control everything they touch. And in a way that's good, but then we tend to overwhelm. I'm not so sure that, so sure that we're such a horrible bad influence, as strong an influence as we like to give ourselves credit for, because thinking in terms of all the glaciers that are melting, who's to say they weren't gonna melt anyway? I mean, how many times, they're pulling up cores from the ice packs, and they're showing how warm temperatures were under the glaciers before, and warm living creatures were there before, but now it's cold, and now it's melting, and it's going back to warm again. That's bad. I mean, it's a
Well, after
cycle.
this winter, right, who would argue that it wouldn't be so bad? But, okay, any other thoughts? You think as a species that, that we separate ourselves from nature?
Absolutely.
Yeah, why do you say absolutely?
It's just the way it seems things are. I'd have to think, but when you first say that, that's what comes to my mind.
Yeah.
We no longer seem, as a species, I guess, we seem to have drifted too far apart from nature. In my way of thinking, you know, we're part of it. I mean, like, again, this word of dominion, like it's us against them, sort of like, you know, we have to, And of course, some things, obviously, disease and that, whatever these causes are, microbacteria and whatever else. I mean, obviously, we have to sustain ourselves, but we also have to sustain nature, I would think, or it's all interdependent, in my opinion, or other opinions too, but the idea is, if we chop down all the trees and we pollute the earth and everything else, I think we're in deep trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
Overpopulation, all of that.
Let me tell you what happened in our little section of town down here south of the hospital this past week. This guy came 100 miles an hour down Rockwood Road and took out a telephone pole, transformer, and everything at 11 o'clock in the morning. We were out of power until 7 or 8 that night. My neighbors were walking around the neighborhood saying, "What did you do when you were a kid?" I'm serious. They were saying, I'm sitting there, this one guy said, "I sat there for an hour looking at the TV going, come on, come on, come on." He seriously said this, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. And his wife went to the grocery store. Well, the guy hit the pole while she was at the store, so she didn't know. She bought all this food to cook, electric stove. And she came home and she says, "Oh man, put it in the refrigerator." So he's standing there with the refrigerator door open, and she's saying, "Shut the refrigerator door, you're letting the cold out." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So we have become really away from nature in that respect. We are totally reliant on powers outside of us. We don't know, they would not, I think if a tornado hit them, I don't know what they'd do for a week, because they're having a rough time for a couple of hours.
Yeah, you do have to wonder,
Yeah.
but, how you survive in that regard.
Would that scenario though fit with the dominion over, over the world, because we're getting it to give us all the things we want, the power, all of the electricity and running water and all of that they all originally came from nature in some format, so does that come to the dominion part of?
We kind of like to think we're in control,
Right.
but we're not. Because we lost the
Control
power and we
chaos.
weren't in control at all. I loved it, but they lost the power and they're out of control. They lost phones. If you lost your cell phones for a whole day and your computers, I mean, seriously, I know a lot of people who would go like berserk.
That does seem to be the case, and we've,
We like to think we're in control, but we're not.
we've talked about, some of those things before. The book, let's ask about the book for a minute. As soon as Mary gets done, we can move ahead here. What, how did you like this book compared to the other books? Just, any thoughts?
I thought it was very well written and gave points on both sides. I mean, both groups were interested in saving animals, but the tacks that they took and,
Right.
and the way they looked at it was so different. I thought it was very thought-provoking, and I think more so than the other books that I read, the last two books.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought it also was very well written. He's very good at describing, but I find it tiresome after a while.
Tiresome, just the
And I had to push myself
descriptions?
to get through it.
Yeah.
If they went on another boat trip again out to the
Yeah.
little cove, I was like, okay, enough. I mean, I don't know. But each boat trip had its own meaning, but it was,
Right, right.
I found it tiresome at first. I had a terrible time getting into it. I really had to work hard to keep reading it. And then it got really interesting. But I bet it was halfway through before it really got
I liked
very
it.
grabbed me.
I liked it because at first I thought I knew like which side I was on, like, because there's, the good guy, bad guy kind of thing going on the whole time. And I flip-flopped back and forth a little bit, and it was just, so that was kind of good, but at the end it was like, oh, they're the bad guys, because they died or something.
Well, I'm not to the end yet, so I
Well,
can't judge.
Well, okay.
I didn't tell you who
critic says?
Yeah, please.
Boyle loves a mess. He loves chaos. He loves marshes and jungles, and he loves the jungle of language, luxuriance in sentences, overgrown with lists and words hanging down like rare fruit for all its exoticism. Although his prose is lucid to the point of transparency, it doesn't require much deeper concentration than a good newspaper, but it does require a dictionary.
That is
I
true.
made a list of
Because
words.
there were, I know, I noticed myself like skipping paragraphs and going back and, you know, and you don't.
That was in the New Republic.
I had the impression that he had a limited plot, but a word quota that he had to meet, and therefore kept adding superfluous words and sentences to fill his quota. Uncontrolled stream of consciousness.
I really
Which he
like,
shared with us.
Stream of
yeah.
consciousness, yeah.
I really like his writing. I read another book by him, The Tortilla Curtain. It's about immigration.
Mhm.
It's really a good story too, but he makes you think. He makes you, want to read more.
I think I agree with you. I think he did put more words in than he needed to. And it actually slowed the whole story down, the whole impact of everything.
It's not an easy structure of writing to follow. You have to concentrate and go back, and that wasn't a sentence, but did it make sense? Yeah.
Okay, well, certainly through the book, there was this conflict between two sides. And I like the fact that it's, as you were saying, you almost wanted to side with somebody, but you weren't quite sure which side to side with. And I think that's really important because it helps you to realize that this question isn't a black and white question. You know, it's not something that you can really, solve with a clear-cut answer. So do we have anything in this area comparable to what they're talking about? I mean, is there any kind of environmental issues that we contend with?
Well, I'm thinking of the cormorants.
Cormorants?
Oh my God, back.
The fact that they proliferated so greatly in this area, but you weren't allowed to touch them because they were not endangered, but they were birds. I don't know, have you all heard about what happened with that? They actually were allowed to go in and poison the nests.
Mm.
I don't know, there's a lot less that I've seen around, but I don't know if it saved the problem.
Very similar.
They do that to
Well,
Canadian geese,
last
they shake the eggs.
That happened on Westchester Island, because it's a preserve, so they were able to do that. And it's because they defoliated
Yeah.
the island, and consequently, the gulls and the herons that nest over there had nowhere.
They don't have
That's-
a natural predator,
Right,
and they're growing without bound.
right, and they're not native at all, here the gulls and the
And
herons.
I lived right on the bay, and last fall, in the fall, it's so cool at migration time, because you can hear the ducks and the geese and the swans come over. And last fall, there were so many cormorants out on the bay. It was frightening. There were like thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of them. So, yeah, they took over last year, big time.
But where did they come from?
Yeah, they're native to Florida, they're relatives of the Anhingas. I don't know how they got
Well,
here.
would they, I mean, did they actually migrate into this region, or were they brought here?
Why they got here?
I don't know, but Green Island is a cormorant preserve. No, you know.
You know, I can't imagine anyone transporting them in their car.
How they took over.
Yeah.
But no, I think they just naturally came into the area, and it's wonderful territory for them. And they're doing whatever their damage is, but, you know, that part's nature, but we don't like what's happening,
Now,
as opposed to other things that man has brought in, either accidentally or deliberately.
Zebra mussels and Asian carp and
Purple loosestrife.
Well, and, you know,
Phragmites.
the mussels, That was unintended.
Right.
The carp were brought in for a distinct reason into Louisiana in the 60s and 70s. It cleaned up fish farm ponds. Forgot that sometimes they have big rainstorms and the ponds overflow.
Now, I might not get the species completely right, because I saw a speaker from Stone Laboratories last summer, and she was talking about that the Lake Erie water snake has
Kristen,
coming back because they were eating the mud puppies, something, I forget, got the mud puppies down low so the snakes didn't have what they wanted to eat. Then the gobies came in, and the snakes decided they liked the gobies, so the snakes are eating the gobies, an invasive species, and making a comeback.
Mhm.
I can't remember what got rid of the mud puppies, but I thought that was very
well,
interesting,
we
because
had
you
the lake
usually
pretty
hear,
polluted, that may have done it.
right, because you usually hear about the invasive species cause a problem, and in this case, the invasive species have become a new food source for a very, very native species that's very particular to this area, that's making a comeback, and what they're finding when they, make them regurgitate, which is a whole other thing that they do out there at Stone Lab.
More than you
Them-
wanna know.
But what they're discovering is that they're eating the gobies, which, so there's an invasive species issue that is actually helping a native species,
But hurting other native species.
could be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, part of what was in the book sort of presented the idea that a certain governmental entity decides it's going to make those decisions on what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So who makes those decisions for us?
Well, Department of Interior, ODNR, and Departments of Natural Resources, but they have to have some public backing or they're not popular.
Or they
And
may
within those organizations, there's great disagreement,
Mm-hmm.
so.
I can give an example. I live on a canal system up in the Portage River, and our septic systems are deplorable. I have been on the EPA, I have called, I'm not gonna say what I've done because I'm on YouTube, but anyways, I mean, nothing like we, just, keeping track of what other people are doing, let's say, and calling if there's any issues. And nobody knows, and I don't know, well then, and it just switched over last year as to septic systems and who's grandfathered in, and if you move in, and, so nobody knows a lot of times too. There's like overlap, and sometimes there's not the best knowledge put forward to those people who are making decisions about what kind of septic system is the most appropriate if you're living on the water, which I think is kind of important. I don't know about you guys, but.
None.
Yeah.
I know, it should be in a sewer taken away, but that's a whole nother story. But anyways, yeah, so that kind of is depressing.
A couple of years ago, I went to a meeting, they had it here at the library, and they had invited people from Columbus, local people who had lived in the area all their lives, and the meeting was about the beach, East Harbor State Park. And I've been going there since I was a child, and it wasn't owned by the state. And it was a natural beach, which people got to by boat or whatever. And then the state bought it. Everybody was happy. Oh, they'll really fix it up nice. So they did. They put in a road, they put in all sorts of bathhouses, I think 6 or 7 of them. And then they decided they didn't want the land to be washed out, so they made a barrier out of concrete and extended that for miles. And then time went by, and all of a sudden, one November, there was a terrible storm. And the water, when it came in, normally would have washed right over the area and gone to the other side of the beach. But this time, there was a cement wall, so the pressure of the water came in, hit the wall, and pushed it back, and they took the beach with it. So there was no beach. This happened 38 years ago. And so this meeting, people that had seen this happen begged the people in Columbus who were in charge of the state funding to let them try a small section of this beach, take down that cement barrier, and see what happens, because nothing was done in 38 years. So, the meeting went on and people got up and talked about it. The state said, well, we can't do anything about it. We're going to do a study. We're paying $15 million. We're going to have a group come in. The group was from Minneapolis. And I thought, why do they bring somebody from Minneapolis over to Ohio to study something that people have lived their whole life studying? So that meant the next year there was not going to be anything done. And I says, we'll see, that'll happen next year. And besides, the state really doesn't know if they want to change it, or they might put up more barriers. They're not quite sure. So after the meeting was over, everybody was so frustrated because the people who came to put input in got nowhere. And all we found out was that somebody is making a lot of money doing studies.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
That had to be one of the young men who came out to my property when we wanted to put up a break wall in front of our yard. And he said, we have to measure the tide on your beach. Sandusky Bay, tide. There's no tide.
Minimal anyways. Yeah.
Hello, an inch?
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay, so let's approach this from a slightly different angle. I asked you at the beginning to define nature. So what we're really talking about is a natural environment, right? And the components of a natural environment, and you know what makes that up, and why we mess around with it. Okay, so the book, you know, both sides were trying to create a natural environment. What are your thoughts on a natural environment? I know we talked about it originally, but you know, just in thinking about how you justify, say, putting a wall up or not putting a wall up, or taking a wall down. I mean, what is it we're trying to accomplish? Is it? I'll ask another question. Is it important to save all the species? I mean, that seems to be one of the things that drives a lot of environmental studies. Is if you find an endangered species, you have to save it. Well, there's been millions of species that have come and gone over the, you know, hundreds and thousands and millions and billions of years that the Earth has been around. So, you know, what's our role?
Well, I think one thing you said is these species came and gone over a large period of time, millions of years, where now, the way I understand it, they're disappearing fairly rapidly. I mean, in our lifetime, that's not considering overall, it was a very short span. So how does one create these things again? If all the rabbits disappeared, how could nature produce a rabbit again? Or is God going to create another one? I don't know if there's new species being created. We're losing what we have.
If you read National Geographic and Smithsonian, they claim that there are new species evolving all the time. Possibly as many evolving as there are becoming extinct. So who knows? I mean, we like to think we're in charge again, but
Well, and we're still discovering new organisms. We're not discovering mammals or birds necessarily, but like microorganisms, and you know what I'm saying? I mean, ants, Theo Wilson's discovering ants all the time. I mean, it's well, not all the time anymore, but you know.
You're saying on a very small scale.
Well, they're still organisms, though. Yeah.
So
True.
where are our lions going to be, you know, on a big scale?
But that would, for these small
We have to put
items
them
you're
in.
saying, it would take, as I believe, a very, very long time for them to develop into something more, what would you call it, complicated. Yeah, they're,
So you're sort of siding with the preservation of the species.
This far into the book, Anna Kappa Yeah, that's a real case. It was the real island infested by rats. Rats were destroying most of what was there. A couple species are completely lost. But the end point probably would have been an island with only rats. Feeding on rats. But they were destroying vegetation and like the cormorants. So that one seemed to be pretty simple if you can eliminate the rats. And man's been a great transporter of rats. You can then let the species that want to be there recover. It's when you bring in a species that can dominate all others that you have a problem.
Well, that would be man. I was
Yeah.
just gonna say.
Well, yeah.
And here we are.
Well, let me be let me just ask another question. If our goal, according to the beginning here, and our goal is to dominate, or to at least, have dominance over, then wouldn't it be appropriate to study those species that actually do dominate? Wouldn't we learn a lot from looking at the rats? And instead of eliminating them, maybe we
But-
should be studying the rats and
But I was
figuring out.
never eliminating them, I was just taking them out of that locale.
Well, this locale, that locale, another locale.
We generally don't like rats.
Because
Well, who put us in charge?
We just got bigger.
But we love deer until they eat our evergreens. And now that's a huge problem. And they have a terrible time getting permission to
But they're so cute.
call the deer herds.
Yeah.
Yeah, people think of raccoons,
Metropolitan park districts and things like that.
people think raccoons are cute too.
Oh my
but
God,
I
I
don't.
know,
I
most
can't-
dangerous
I've seen
ones
it.
we've got out there for humans.
I can't believe the guy, they said that he made the guy in the book pick up the raccoon and didn't he put it in his boat and take it to the island? I mean, he
Yeah,
did.
to compare 'em.
Seriously? That's stupid, because they carry like horrible parasites and hookworms, and you don't wanna get anywhere near.
Well, but he was
He was totally
anti-killing.
ignorant.
Well, I am too.
But he was okay
until
if
it comes
nature
into my
killed.
little area, and then we have to talk.
But it was hysterical how once the Park Service people discovered the two raccoons, and well, maybe they rafted here, maybe they did this,
It's
maybe they did
natural.
that, and the whole
Yeah.
thing is just hysterical.
Yeah. So I would think, for preservation, looking more to preserve an ecosystem and not necessarily a specific species within that ecosystem. So if the ecosystem, because species have been coming and going and will continue to come and go, so if you try not, if something man is doing either themselves or because we allowed another species to come in and dominate is harming an ecosystem, and that would be where you would step in and try to fix that problem that you may have caused. Otherwise, you stay out of it and let the ecosystem do its own coming and going, survival of the fittest. If that species is meant to survive there, it will. If it's not, it won't.
Now I'll cut to another part though. Where we go in Florida is a barrier island.
Mhm.
Barrier islands are not permanent structures. But we put houses on them
Mhm.
and want to make them permanent structures. So I got to watch the beach renourishment. I'll pump the sand back to where it once was. We do the same thing along the lake.
Mhm.
Nature doesn't really like bodies of water. It would prefer that they become wetlands. And it tries to wash in all sorts of things to fill them up. We dig massive amounts of silt out of Toledo Harbor
Mhm.
because it's a stupid place to have a harbor. And then do an open lake dump because we know the lake disperses it and it will either go into the central basin or the western basin or eastern basin or over the falls. So we're taking the farmland from over there and shipping it to the ocean, because nature would also like to fill in the ocean.
Yeah, but the glaciers took the topsoil from Canada and Michigan and gave it to us.
That's right. That was the problem. But what we're trying to do is preserve the lake as it is at this moment. Like we were trying to preserve the beach at East Harbor, that nature wanted to move anyway. But we liked the beach at East Harbor. We liked the beach in Florida. We liked the Barrier Islands. So we're also not letting nature do its thing
For our own convenience.
because
That
we
would've
like
been
what we're doing.
It would have been interesting if they could have taken that wall down, just to see what that beach would have looked like.
Oh, yeah.
If they hadn't done anything. I think it still would have been there.
Well, we've learned that we have no idea what we're doing when we put structures in the water,
Right.
and we still don't know.
Okay, we're going to,
In his award-winning novels and short stories, T.C. Boyle covers everything, from illegal immigration to Frank Lloyd Wright. But always at the core of his artistic vision is the awe that he feels for the natural world.
I'm just amazed by the way the light is shining on this creek, or finding out what's around the next corner. I think many of us are divorced from that, particularly people living in urban centers. You know, I think one of the things art does is kind of address that wonder. And so does science, too.
Feelings of wonder at the natural world can take on many forms, from a reverence for its unspoiled beauty to a curiosity about how we may be able to shape it to meet our needs. Sometimes we're pushing the limits of controlling nature. Other times we're asking the question, well, shouldn't we leave the pristine, pristine?
I remember there was a story in The Independent about hiking on Santa Rosa Island with pictures of waterfalls, and of course there's nobody there. So it really intrigued me. And at night, it is like going back 5,000 years. There's no sound of human intervention.
Santa Rosa is part of Channel Islands National Park, just off the coast of Southern California. T.C. Boyle's book, When the Killing's Done, is a fictionalized account of historical events and black rats in that island chain.
The black rats on Anacapa got there in 1853 with the wreck of a paddle wheel steamship coming down from San Francisco. All the people got off, the rats got on the island. 150 years later, 2001, the Park Service decided to remove them because they're invasive.
And removal meant killing them by dropping poison from airplanes.
Which of course made everybody berserk.
But the Park Service was just trying to do its job, preserving natural resources, which in this case meant protecting the island's unique birds and mice from being eaten into extinction by the black rats.
If you think about it, those rats were a unique subspecies. They had been there alone for 150 years breeding together.
Killing off rats to save mice and birds? There's an interesting idea.
Now, there's a further question here. How can you privilege one animal over the other?
And if we kill off an entire species, or subspecies, is that part of the natural order? Well, it turns out, whether it's been caused by meteors hitting the Earth, or ice ages moving in, or human intervention, researchers estimate that 98% of all species that ever existed are now extinct.
Of course, there are positive outcomes from the extinction of other species because new species arise.
Whenever we step in and tinker with nature, we have to think about the unintended consequences.
Our species is fairly young. The conditions that allowed us to arise are very tenuous. People say, save the earth, but in fact, what they should say is save the ecosystem that allows us to thrive.
Whether you think that humans are part of the ecosystem or on the outside looking in, we can all agree that experiencing the natural world is essential.
So we need to be outside. We need it for our souls, to feel the pulse of something. And I don't mean to feel it while jogging along the beach with your iPod stuck in your ear. I mean to hear it and smell it and feel it and taste it and just be part of it. I'm not a scientist and I don't have the rigor of a scientist. I'm just like, I suppose, the audience for this show who are alive in the world and just full of wonder.
But you'd have to think two things. Number one is Ed's not what I expected him to look like. I mean, because I think this is kind of interesting seeing like each one of the authors. But anyways, I didn't know I didn't know if TC was male or female. But if we want to think about, you know, we're trying to preserve our species. You know, rats carry large amounts of disease, so maybe getting rid of them was preserving that. Preserving us.
I think we have a lot of rats in the world. There are probably a lot of subspecies. I think we would eliminate one on an island without ruining the world.
What do we know about science when a population of, let's say, rats gets so large? What happens? Do they turn on each other? Or how large could it,
Oh, that's a good question.
how large could it
Carrying
continue?
capacity.
Mhm.
You know, at some point, is the island so
Yeah, it's an
inhabited that they jump in the water and to get away? Do we know anything about this?
You know, that's not my field of study, so I can't say,
Like,
but
okay. Well, being a biology teacher, I know just like this much about it. And, you know, it just
They carry
depends.
diseases.
Well, yeah, and I mean, with populations, I mean, there's population ecology and population studies, and it's a huge thing. And from my main understanding is that populations will, whenever there's that kind of boom, you're gonna either do one thing, you're gonna level out, or you're gonna bust. So it seemed like that population leveled out, so there was, which is kind of interesting to think about, something, like some way that, what made them special so that they leveled out as opposed to busting, you know, like a population of bacteria, you get sick in your respiratory tract. You know, it's high population and eventually resources get better.
One other question then for the biologist, if these rats that came there were just a few in the beginning and perhaps the species evolved,
One chip's worth, whatever that is.
yeah, does disease always follow them if there's no source for the disease?
Well, I mean, it depends on what the pathogen would be. I mean,
Right, so
it
in
could
the-
be,
the Black Plague, it was a flea, and they bit the rat, and then the rat bit a
so
person.
apparently there was no natural pathogen that was, you know, and usually when you're looking at carrying capacity, you're looking at natural resources, and so if it's an island that, you know, is in California, it's gonna have a lot of rain, a lot of, you know, plants and so I mean, it seems like it's a pretty healthy.
Right, they're not gonna freeze to death.
Exactly,
Mhm.
yeah.
Sure.
So, I don't know.
Well, the diet of the rat is pretty indiscriminate.
Yes.
Yes.
As long as there's something there to eat.
They'll eat each other, I mean, and all that other,
They'll eat the young,
yeah.
and that may be
Yeah.
how the population gets limited.
Uh-huh.
But isn't that the way we kind of do as human beings too? If we have an overpopulation of human beings, that we die off or kill each other?
Well,
So
you don't
far,
eat your
we've
young.
managed to kill each other pretty well.
Yeah, that's how they're
Yeah.
doing it, all this
Yeah.
genocide.
yeah, but
and
I don't think that you can really say that we have curbed our population.
It still goes up.
Yeah, we've continued to increase, and that is one of the stress factors on our planet, is the fact that there's so many people, and we just don't have the willingness to address that issue effectively, you know.
But because of antibiotics, we're living longer. 150 years ago, most of us would have been dead already.
Right.
So, because of pneumonia.
But now they're not as efficient as they used to be.
We may have peaked
Right.
already on
Right.
antibiotics is the concern,
Mhm.
because we're breeding a better strain of germs.
In the video, he talked about, one of the real problems when you start messing with environments is the unintended consequences. So how do you train somebody who's gonna go into this field and is going to, work for the National Park Service or for ODNR or for some agency that's really trying to create that balance? How do you train somebody to be aware of the unintended?
How can you? I mean, just to be aware of it, but I mean, you can't, how do you know what's gonna happen?
But
it's-
now we have lots of bad examples
This is true.
to use as both a learning tool of what didn't we know that got us into the problem, And how should we expand our thought process? And this is just more than these unintended consequences. You can find the same issues within engineering and all fields of science of being blinded by your own brilliance.
We can't do that with our own human relations. You know, how could we figure out how to do it in the world of nature? Rumsfeld's unknowns, you know, no one anticipated when they should have what the consequences would be of an Iraqi invasion and all that sort of thing. And there was lots of evidence there that we could have drawn on. So we
Or
can't do it with
chose
things
not
that
to
are our
draw
own
on.
creation. Why would we be expected to do it with
But
alien
how
species
do
other than
you
ourselves?
bring students along in that area?
Well, in my field, as anthropologists, that's what we do.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the fields where we do take a broad approach, and we do think about the impacts of all kinds of systems that are operating at the same time, and how when you tweak one, you're gonna unintentionally mess around with something else. And, you know, I think that you can easily, you need to be aware of that. You need to train people to think like that, you know, and a lot of times people are too myopic in their own field, and they don't think about the broader consequences or potentially where they could be. So, yeah, it's just a matter of exposure. And the other thing that I think is, you know, he mentioned, and I think is very important, is that we have lost in some sense the ability to get our students out in nature.
I'm taking my kids on a 3-hour walk tomorrow, so, because we have tests, so here's an unintended good consequence. We have standardized testing tomorrow, so, whatever, but it's for the junior high, so me and all my high school students have to sit there for, which I've done for the last, I have 3 hours with one class. Are you kidding me? We go on walks. So we're gonna go out and observe and take samples and go out and look at trees, and we just so happen to be doing plant ecology right now.
Good.
So I may or may not have timed that right, so I try, I really do. It's not hard. Mrs. Saffron, I'm too lazy to go on a walk.
Oh.
Like, well, you can sit here and take notes for 3 hours. Okay, never mind.
Well, I do think that's a problem, though, you know, when we're.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's unheard of that someone takes a kid outside of the high school, at my school. It's like,
Well, yeah, we certainly, with our programs that we run up at the site, when we bring kids up, you know, we hear the whole gamut of excuses as to why they can't dig and why they can't sit on the ground, and they can't possibly get dirt on them because they don't understand it's not really dirt, it's soil, and the soil's good, and, you know, and on and on and on.
But if you explain it's living, it'll freak them out.
Oh, they find it's living when they dig up the worms and the cicada and everything else that pops out at them, and they go, oh yeah, there is something alive here, so.
But that's a great general question of how do you make learning real? I mean, I this year tried singing in the Terra Choral Society. Well, Friday night, we were at the State Theater, Sandusky, where we did 3 pieces of our own and then sang back up to Melissa Manchester for 2 pieces. But that entire performance was arranged, produced, and executed by the students at Terra. They did everything from all the original contact to running the lights and whatever. And how do you get kids to have that kind of experience? Get outside the classroom.
We could start by getting rid of all the politicians who require all the testing that
You
you have.
betcha. Get rid of those standards and let
I
us
don't
do it.
even, I have testing on
Yeah.
They think-
Wednesday, which is my birthday, and I get to spend all day with my kids in a computer lab testing.
They think
So
because
happy.
they went to high school and college and have master's degrees,
But-
they know
But
all there
these
is
tests
to
are
do
on the
about
computer, and you
education.
can run little simulations, and if you push this button, the green fish overpopulate, and then if you push this button, So that'll teach them everything they need to know.
What I'm saying is the politicians think that they know
I know.
everything there is to know about everything, and they don't have any concept what it's like to be in a classroom with 15 regular
You
kids,
know what, if,
3 brilliant kids, and 2 kids will never catch up with middle.
I tell you what, if I thought like
have no
that
idea.
though, I hope that they're trying, that someone up there is trying, that they're thinking that this is the best for them. It's not, I know, but.
It's not even close.
I have a question for you, to get off that topic for a second.
Good, please, because my blood
Yeah,
pressure's
let's
going
go.
up.
I'm 100% behind you as well. I'm 100% behind that, and I think we've touched on that topic almost every time, because it's so evasive into everything we do, right?
I gotta make one comment about that. I
No, you
just
can't,
have to.
Mary.
I have to. I had a student whose parents were both college professors, and they had a child who is brilliant. She is an internationally known jazz singer now, okay? Brilliant. But she bombed standardized tests like crazy, all the time. And first time I had to have a conference with them, they came in and they looked at the test results, and he just sets them aside. He said, I don't put much store in these. He said, I run a huge department. We do all kinds of projects for the university. And he said, I have never once given a project to somebody and told them, go sit at that desk, take no resources and references with you, consult no one, and you have 3 hours to come up with the solution and map out this project. The world doesn't work that way. Why would we think that this is so important
I
in
like
schools?
that argument, thank you.
It's the
I'm
best.
totally
It's the
stealing that, by
best.
the way.
Okay, Mary, thank you, that was good. We'll let that go.
Thanks.
You can keep that in, we don't have to edit that.